When it comes to the US economy and the American dollar and the stock market, liberals are really dumb, and that's why all of them are so poor. Because all liberals know how to do is to simply exist and wait to react to the things that their liberal media overlords tell them to react to. This is why they continually have fits about the Trump tariffs, and they continue to insist that our economy is suffering, even though almost no economic marker shows that. I keep getting comments on my channel saying stuff like this. Recession, or stuff like this.
Well, you're distracted by your hate of immigrants. Elon and Palantir are taking all of your personal data, and Trump is crashing the economy. But yay, you finally get to feel superior to Jose the gardener. Y'all will be going on a short bus to hell.
First of all, very racist of you to assume that somebody named Jose would just be a gardener here in America. Don't you think they're much more capable of achieving better and higher jobs if they gain legal immigrant status here in this country? Or do we just let them in to do all of the undesirable lower tier work that we think is beneath us? That's my first question. Secondly, how on earth is Trump crashing the economy? Well, you see, in all honesty, he's not. And right here, right now, on American Advocates, I'm going to demonstrate how Trump is actually fixing the economy and how every economic marker showcases that. So if you're a liberal, make sure to click off this video right now, because the truth of the matter is, you don't have the guts to stomach this. First of all, I find it very rich that the liberals now all of a sudden want to talk about the inflation rates, mainly for two reasons. One, everything they say about the inflation rate currently is completely untrue, and all it takes is a 5-second Google search that they're unwilling to do to realize just how untrue it is. But they don't do that. And two, where was all this inflation talk during the Biden regime? You remember back in 2022? Let me show you. Look at this. June 2022, the inflation rate, 9.1%. Outrageous. They said nothing about the inflation then. The media was forced to cover it, of course, but I don't remember seeing a bunch of liberal comments complaining about the inflation rate on political videos. They were all suspiciously incredibly quiet about it then. Not only were we experiencing inflation back then, but I also remember going to the grocery store every 2 weeks and noticing that the box of cereal was shrinking, that the size of the potato chip bags were getting smaller while the price was staying the same. And then eventually the price on these new smaller products were going up from there as well. It was an insane time to be alive when your family-sized potato chip bag went from 21 ounces to 12 ounces, and then eventually the price wound up going up $1 or $2 more. Not a peep from liberals back then, though, on it. This right here shows a stark comparison in the first term President Trump economy when it came to the inflation to the Joe Biden one. There's no getting around it. And then they have the nerve, liberals, to tout that Trump inherited an incredible economy from Biden this past year, and now he's ruining it. How is that again? How? Because the economy Trump inherited from Biden still wasn't as good as the one that Biden had inherited from Trump. And oh my God, COVID this and COVID that, it was such an unfair hand dealt to Biden. The perpetual victimhood that the liberals portray online makes me want to vomit. But the very fact of the matter is this. Biden handed off an economy to President Trump that was drastically better than the economy in the middle of his presidency, but Biden created that problem himself with the inflation rate. The very thing that they say about Trump with these tariffs and how we don't applaud someone for fixing a problem they created, which is completely untrue in that scenario, is the exact truth of the scenario behind the entire Biden presidency. He created the problem with the inflation. The stock market was soaring up, all while the Fed was printing copious amounts of new money, inflating the US economy. And then eventually he signed in a nonsense Tariff Inflation Act bill, and the inflation rates were lowered, of course. It was an entire disaster. But finally, America made the right decision back in November, and when President Donald Trump took office, he began fixing the economy. And of course, in the short term, there is a shocking impact that happens when somebody finally comes in with common sense. All along on this channel, I've been predicting the short-term effects of what the Trump tariffs would do. A lower dollar value. I predicted that, I think, on my first video, and if not, I predicted it on several videos after that, before the tariffs even took effect. It's an easy one to predict. Also, the effects on the stock market. Everyone can see that coming. The stock market is volatile in nature when huge changes happen. It's just how it is. But thirdly, the one that I'm the most proud of is stating that tariffs are not inflationary. They're de facto deflationary, actually, so long as they have a long enough time to work in the proper fashion that they're supposed to work in. So many poor economists out there insist that tariffs are inflationary, but that overlooks the actual definition of what inflation is, which is, of course, a gradual and progressive increase over time. Tariffs are not that. Tariffs are an increase in price, but typically they're a one-time increase in price. It's all about the leveling out process, which of course liberals have no patience for because they want to be mad at President Donald Trump. So they want to soak up the short-term chaos of these massive policy shifts. And they want to point to them and say, we knew it, we were right about Trump. All the while, I think many of them deep down know that the long-term effects of this is going to make our economy amazing. At least the higher up liberals, the politicians and the news media knows this, which is why they're so aggressively reporting on these short-term effects. They want the fear. They want to prey on the people now while they can. But the proof is in the pudding. Inflation rates have been down now for 3 months in a row. Each time under this Trump administration, the inflation rate has slowed and lowered lower than forecasted. It started back in February, in fact. Inflation rate eased to 2.8% in February, lower than expected. This article was published March 12th, 2025. Going on from there, this article was published April 10th, 2025. Inflation rate eases to 2.4% in March, lower than expected. Core at 4-year low. And it kept getting better from here. Inflation just hit a 4-year low despite Democrat claims. 2.4% this chart shows. And for April, it wound up slowing to 2.3% as well. Also in April, food prices fell for the first time since November of 2020. And here's an article talking about what the effects of the inflation rate slowing to 2.3% in April should have when it comes to June. This article states, April's Consumer Price Index inflation report, scheduled for release May 13th, should be another relatively muted inflation reading, according to nowcasts. That may support an interest rate cut in June. Jerome Powell, we're looking at you and we're all waiting. And when it comes to too late Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, President Donald Trump just had him visit the White House 2 days ago, where he, according to news articles and reports, scolded Jerome, and rightfully so. This article states, Trump met with Jerome Powell today to scold him about rates. Powell stressed the Fed is staying out of politics, which is an absolute bunch of nonsense. You see, Jerome Powell is listed as part of the Republican Party, but he is the very example of why MAGA is in the position that it's in and why MAGA symbolizes a force for change in this country, because Powell is demonstrating all of the traits of the old establishment Republican Party, aka essentially the rhinos, the Republicans in name only, and he is a perfect example of the kind of Republican that the country has decided to shift away from, and for good reason. This article later goes on to state also, Trump has described Powell as a fool and a major loser, which is completely true, while also saying that the Fed chief's termination cannot come fast enough. This is also true. His harsh criticism of Powell is mostly centered on the central bank not lowering interest rates quickly enough for his own liking. And this is a CNN report, so of course they're phrasing it this way. But the fact of the matter is this, it's not about Trump's own liking either. It is considered good economic policy to lower interest rates when inflation slows 2 months in a row or more, which has already happened. And he is refusing to lower the interest rates. You see, Jerome Powell says he's not getting political, but in his very essence, he is completely politically biased against President Donald Trump for some reason, which is influencing his decisions to not lower the interest rates. He had no problem lowering interest rates for former President Joe Biden, and I wonder why that is. But moving on from just simply talking about the inflation rates, there are other economic markers that are beginning to look more and more promising in time. Most notably, the consumer confidence report surge. This is not something that the media wants to talk about at length for good reason, because they want you to think that the economy is slowly crumbling around us because of these Trump tariffs. However, consumer confidence index increased in May, marking a rebound after a surge in April. The index rose to 98.0, a 12.3-point increase, exceeding the forecast of 87.1. This is the first monthly rise since November. The Present Situation Index, which reflects consumers' assessment of current economic conditions, also increased, reaching 135.9. And as usual, when it comes to all these economic markers and how they've been forecasted, they're performing better than expected under President Donald Trump, despite the fear-mongering centered around the Trump tariffs. This article states the consumer confidence sees largest monthly increase in over 4 years. And moving beyond the consumer confidence index, which has been touted, by the way, and used by liberals.
Well, the inflation's down, but the consumer confidence is so low. I mean, how's that going for you guys? Nobody's buying anything. Everyone thinks that the economy is crashing.
Not anymore. And gas prices are lower now too. They continue to plummet. I'm paying the lowest I've paid for gas in years. I can't remember the last time I paid what I'm paying per gallon right now on gas. That's going to likely continue to drop. Gas prices in the U.S. fell during May 2025. The national average price for regular gasoline was around $3.16 per gallon as of late May. This was significantly lower than the previous year's average of $3.58 a gallon and was the lowest seasonal level since 2021. And now let's move on to the stock market, because for some reason, liberals have decided to recently care about the stock market, at least when it suited them about 2 months ago, when we were experiencing the short-term volatile effects that the market was going through after the announcement of the Liberation Day Trump tariffs. You see, it was real popular for liberals to want to talk about the stock market and how it was such a bad look for the American economy and how we were absolutely going to be experiencing a Great Depression. It was easy for them to say that from about April 2nd through about April 10th. But for the rest of us who are smart, we just simply bought the dip on April 8th and then patiently waited a few weeks for the rebound to happen, which was inevitable. Of course, the liberal media didn't want you to know there was an inevitable rebound happening, and as a result, their liberal sheep followers were convinced we were entering a 1930s level Great Depression era. But what does the stock market show currently? Well, in May, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 3.72%. And when it comes to the S&P 500, that was up 5.49%. News articles, in fact, have been hitting the internet over this S&P 500 performance this past month. According to Yahoo Finance, S&P 500 marks best May in 30 years as Wall Street bets on tariff relief. Now, see, here's the thing with this. Of course, this is Yahoo as well, another Trump-hating outlet. So what they're claiming is that the stock market is betting on tariff relief. But the fact of the matter is, if you're an investor right now and you're paying attention at all to Trump's economic policy and tariffs, you know that the tariffs aren't going anywhere. So this whole tariff relief thing being the biggest contributing factor to the stock market performing well is basically a half-truth. I do think investor optimism is increasing when Trump does lower the tariffs on these countries, like China, for instance, from 145% to 50%. It makes sense that that would cause some more optimism in the stock market. But the fact of the matter is this: Trump has made it very clear these tariffs are going nowhere. The rates are going to get lowered as he expects countries to continue negotiating on fair trade practices with America. But what we can see even from something like the UK trade deal, which of course according to liberals never happened, is that Trump is going to keep tariff rates on these countries. With UK, for instance, it's 10%. Other countries we might see 20% or higher. It will just depend on the trade deficit that we have with those countries and what kind of a deal they're willing to negotiate with us to be more fair in the future. But tariffs are in, and tariffs are here to stay. And so despite that fact, the stock market continues to perform. Inflation continues to drop. Gas prices, which don't really have much to do with tariffs, continue to go down. All the while, in some cases, Trump is actually raising tariffs, like he just did to protect the American Steel Union. Trump announces steel tariffs are going up. This was just a day or two ago. President Trump said he was doubling the tariff on imported steel, saying Friday that the move would add more protection to the domestic steel industry. And so going back to that Yahoo article talking about tariff relief, it's not going to happen the way that they're saying, and they're trying to make it out to be that way, where the only barrier to a healthy American economy is Trump himself and his stupid tariff policies, according to them. But the rest of us know that not only are his tariff policies not stupid, but in fact they are working, especially when it comes to the long-term performance of the American economy. And I just want to go back quickly to the stock market performance as well, because there's also the NASDAQ, and an article has been written about that too. You see, the NASDAQ is also up huge in May, up 7.92%. And according to this article, May 30th, 2025, S&P 500 and NASDAQ finished May with biggest monthly gains since November of 2023. Trump plans to double steel tariff. So where exactly is this recession? What's going on? The only liberal narrative that they have to stick to currently is that there is a lag from the effects of the tariffs. Well, all of the imports that we're waiting on, wait till those hit under tariff prices, then the economy's really going to struggle. They've been saying that now for 2 months, and I haven't seen that happen either. But it's out there. That's currently what they're running with right now. It's the current narrative of choice. We're just waiting on it. That Great Depression, it's coming. It'll be here by August. You wait and see. That's what they're saying. I'm still waiting. And if you're a liberal, you might just be waiting forever, because there's no Great Depression coming, as far as I can tell. What I'm really waiting on as a Republican voter, and what Trump is waiting on, is for Jerome Powell to cut those interest rates. That's what everyone should truthfully be mad about. That guy needs to cut the interest rates. That will help complete Trump's tariff plan in major ways. It will help with the increase of domestic production, which is exactly what Trump is aiming for with the tariffs. And an increase in domestic production will help the American economy tremendously. The very fact that Jerome Powell is refusing to do so not only shows his political bias against President Donald Trump, but it showcases a very irresponsible chairman of the Fed who would rather place his own ego and his own opinions ahead of the American people. But what are your thoughts and opinions? Are we heading for a Great Depression like the liberals insist we are? Are these tariffs bad for America? Let me know what your thoughts are on all of it down below in the comments. And if you're not a liberal, subscribe to this channel. It's 100% free to do. Thanks for watching.